Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is our culture of separation, domination, and control. And this culture is so deeply entrenched in our language and our accepted behavior that we don't even recognize how we're perpetuating this destructive and um, uh, damaging pattern that is shaping our world in so many ways. So it should be an interesting conversation. Before we get started, let's just take a couple minutes to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light, lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So good to be here with you this morning. Good morning, Rosalind. So glad to have you join us this morning and everyone else who's with us. So we're talking about our culture of separation, domination, and control. And I wrestled with titling this something about the patriarchy, but I think that's that moniker is triggering for so many people, and I still need to address it, I guess. When we talk about the patriarchy, we're kind of talking about the father figure, the dominant father figure, and in a family structure, for example. So, in other words, that authority. And this is, we're talking about archetypes here in a way. The patriarchy is an archetypal notion, but what we're really looking at is this culture of domination and control, where there's an authority that knows better, that has the power to dominate. Okay, so we see that governmentally, we see it socially, and it has a pervasive presence in our culture. So if we look at the different expressions of this domination and control and how it makes itself present in our culture, we can see that it's everywhere. Like the foundation is one of separation and othering. So if there's an authority, then there are people who are not in authority, right? And so there is a hierarchy. And when there's a hierarchy, there's competition to to become elevated in that hierarchy. And if we look at authority, what is it about? It's about control. It's about exercising control. And we can see this, we can see the symptoms of this paradigm everywhere we look. We can see it in business, where it's about competition rather than cooperation. We can see it in the way that we interact with nature, in that we're trying to control nature, we're trying to control our health, control our environment. What, you know, if we even think about what we're doing with nature, trying to control the pathway of waterways rather than working with nature, trying to dominate it, presuming that we know better. There's a righteousness and arrogance that goes along with this. And there's an inherent violence to the notion of domination and control. And this hierarchy leads us into a context where we believe that one person might be better than another, where we operate as if one life is more important than another. And we lose our connection. I mean, this even goes into the head and heart separation, where we elevate what we call rational thought, and where we denigrate emotion as something less than or as weakness. And if we look at the language of our culture, when we're engaged in a project, we're going to crush it, right? We're going to dominate it. We're going to just shred it, you know, like if we think about these words, they're words that are rich with violence. And until we see these things, I mean, it's so pervasive. It's shocking when you actually start to look. And when we actually see these things, it's very sobering to be looking for different language that is not language of war, domination, and control. And even where we say we're gonna surge forward, we're gonna push forward. Again, it's pushing rather than dancing or collaborating or communing, right? We'll fight for our rights. Even fighting for our rights is perpetuating this culture, an atmosphere of obstruction and competition and combativeness, right? We would need to fight our way to the top. We're it's funny because normally all these words are right at the tip of my tongue, but I'm even if we think about I'm looking to overcome, or I want to kill the ego. How about that one? I mean, that's just such a great sort of paradox in its way, right? We're looking to elevate ourselves and to go, you know, to go to the next level of our consciousness and our awareness. And what are we trying to do is we're trying to kill the ego. It's interesting, right? These things that we don't even recognize because it's so deeply ensconced, entrenched in our cultural soup, where we believe, we're taught to believe that more for me means less for you, or more for you means less for me. You know, there's an inherent scarcity in that foundation of competition, right? It's a dog eat dog world, those kinds of sayings, right? And we have a righteousness about fighting for a good cause, right? We're fighting. It's still war. It's still war. So if we look at this culture of domination, control, violence, like even looking at our legislation, you know, that we get to punish. It's very much a culture of punishment and right and wrong and polarity and polarization. And what is the world we're looking to create? And can we create the world we're looking to create? Good morning, Isabel. So wonderful to have you joining us. It's been a long time. We're talking about our culture of domination, control, and separation and violence, really. I mean, it's like if I win, you lose. If you win, I lose. Winners and losers, rather than collectively working together. And so much of this deeply entrenched cultural patterning impedes us from being able to create a new paradigm that allows us to be part of nature, for example, rather than dominating nature, trying to dominate nature, trying to control, trying to harness nature. I mean, even if we think of the word mastery, what is the other side of master? Is slave, right? Even these places where we revere certain words, um, it carries the same undertone of domination and control and violence. And we're going to wrestle it into submission, right? It's just crazy how deeply entrenched the patterns are, and how invisible they are because they are so pervasive. So Isabel says, very interesting and upgraded team for sure. Thank you for the courage. Isabel, thank you. That's beautiful. And so I think it takes courage to be willing to look, to be willing to stand back and see what is so present that it's practically invisible, in order to find ways to carry ourselves into a new world, to be creating a world of building bridges, to be creating a world of connection and unity. And it's really challenging because we don't really have many models for that. You know, we're like, we're so oriented to the competition or the opponent, you know, and to the opposition forces. And it takes stepping into a space of courageous creativity to be asking new questions, to be exploring ways to see with a new lens, to find another path forward. And we do have some models, thankfully. They're not as available readily to us, but Indigenous peoples have models for collaboration and connection, and certainly for relationship to nature, and for resolving difference, and rather than punishment, more redemption. I don't know if I don't love the word redemption, but more like reparations, you know, making amends, reconnecting, rehabilitating. There are models existent that allow for, or that are predicated upon, connection rather than separation. In a world of separation, there's lots of danger from others, right? Because there's the threat. We're conditioned to the threat. We're conditioned to scarcity. Our language, this culture of separation, domination, and control, is also predicated on lack, and that there's not enough, and that if you're thriving, that's a threat to me rather than a support. That more for you is less for me. And until we can, well, always the first step toward transformation is awareness. And so when we start recognizing how completely entrenched these patterns are in our culture and our way of being, until we can start recognizing that, we can't really change it because we're not present to it. We can't transform it. We can't move beyond it because we are helping to perpetuate it unawares, right? Without our conscious complicity, we are still being deeply complicit. And so the question, and also part of this big culture of domination and control is the culture of doingness, you know, fixing things because we know better how to control it. And so in our rush to fix things, we often are creating more problems because what we're fixing is symptoms. We're not looking at the deeper dynamism. We're not looking at the system. We're not looking at all the interactions. We're just looking at this one thing that we're calling a problem. And we can look at that particularly with the way that we interact with nature, right? We find that there's pests in our garden, so we treat the pests, poison the pests, which may further deteriorates the garden, for example. And rather than looking at what we're planting, how we're treating the soil, how we're planting, understanding the greater systems, like killing off all the life in the soil in order to plant plants to be able to thrive, but they need the life in the soil to do that, right? Or maybe recognizing that the pests are an indicator of a deeper problem or a deeper imbalance. And what we're looking to do is to find ways to that balance. Again, as a connection rather than, oh, here's a problem, like somebody has an issue with their heart. Well, let's go fix the heart instead of looking at, well, what's going on in the system that is then showing up with the issue in the heart. And we have devolved into a mechanistic approach to pretty much everything. And it's not that the mechanistic approach hasn't yielded lots of beneficial information. It has, and it has also produced a limited understanding that you cannot extract one part of a system and expect to have an intervention that benefits the entire system without considering the entire system. There may be acupuncture points where you can make pinpointed change that will then bubble out into the rest of the system, but that it's not by fixing superficial things that are symptoms rather than the foundational acupuncture point for balance. So Isabel says, we live in a world of manipulation, so that's part of it. We're not supposed to be united, instead apart and against each other. Religions are part of the manipulation. Besides governments and universities, we're not free at all until we are all aware. They will continue to enslave us. Humans are the enemy of themselves, nothing else. Animals are more intelligent and intuitive for awareness of what fears them. I so appreciate what you're saying, Isabel, about manipulation. And the thing is that a lot of the manipulation occurs unconsciously because we adopt these principles that we're not even aware of. So, for instance, we adopt the principles of competition, which then allow us to act in certain in business in ways that are not principled. But because we have these, we sort of have a different set of rules for business because it's competition and because money is scarce and the objective is to get more money, for instance, we play into these systems unknowingly. And so we get to awaken. And as we awaken, we can then influence the system and we can then create new pathways, which is what is absolutely necessary. But what typically happens is we meet violence with violence. And we may overcome an old oppressor, but we become the new oppressor because we're still operating within the same system. And so what we're doing here is calling for an awakening, calling for a willingness to stand back and see these very uncomfortable truths about even ourselves and the way we interact with ourselves, where we try to dominate and control our emotions. We try to dominate and control our body rather than dancing with it, rather than learning from it, rather than communicating with it, revering its intelligence, respecting it. And so as we awaken to how we have been operating within this culture, as we awaken to seeing, then we can begin to have choice. But it's a constant reawakening, because it's very easy to keep falling back into that pattern because it is so deeply pervasive. So the opportunity here is to start paying attention to our language, to our drives, to recognize that it's not our fault, but that it's a symptom of a system in which we reside. And once we start recognizing it, then we can start the practice of exercising choice, start strengthening that muscle that allows us to exercise choice. And we can't do that until we're aware and awake. So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is The Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it is a deep pleasure and privilege to have the opportunity to spend this time musing about what it is to be human together. So much gratitude to you, and